This is the RICOH GR III HDF. And in this video, we're going to talk about what the HDF filter is, what it does, why I chose it over the ND version of this camera. We're going to talk about 28mm versus 40mm, the GR3 versus GR IIIx, 4 versus 4X, if you're watching this in the future. We're going to talk about image quality. We're going to talk about battery life. We're going to talk about a few accessories and some shooting tips. Number one, the HDF filter. What is it? It stands for Highlight Diffusion Filter, HDF, and it is off, on. You see it? Off, on. You see it? Now, I'm going to try and bring the lens more forward. If you look closely, it's a piece of glass with little dots on it, basically. Right? So if I take it off, on. There you go. RICOH, because they're genius printers, they managed to print, inkjet, print those little dots on a piece of glass, and the dots are arrayed in just the perfect way to diffuse the highlights of your image in a pleasant way. And you are given the option of having that filter. Boom. Now, why did I choose this over the ND version? And if we look closely, you see how diffused that is. How grainy this image looks is a whole other thing I'm about to talk about. And let's take one with the filter off. And here you see the difference. Off, on, off, on. Now, the grainy, colorful image that you saw is one of the main reasons I went with the HDF version instead of the ND. I like getting film looks out of this RICOH GR. So I set mine up to get a film camera-like, almost even sometimes an instant camera-like type of look out of the JPEGs I get out of this camera. So the HDF filter really just adds a whole other layer there. A lot of the shots you're going to get with film are often going to have this diffused effect regardless, not just because of the older lenses and how they were created, but also because of the way that light hits the surface of film. This is a picture taken at regular ISO without the HDF filter. You see how sharp everything is? It's like almost too sharp, right? And we're at f2.8, right? Well, if I add the HDF filter on top, and now let's go look at that same image, and we can compare, you see my sharpness has softened up just by a little bit. Focus on your gifts and keep producing. Looks a little sharper with the HDF off, a little softer with the HDF on. It even softened up my contrast just by a tiny bit, as you can see. Everything else stayed the same. So this is a wonderful creative tool to have inside of your camera, just at the press of a button available to you. The ND filter is nice if you want to do a lot of outdoor portraits at f2.8 in bright sunlight. Let's say you're at the beach. The camera that scene is simply too bright for this camera. So having that 2 stops of ND helps just darken things up a little bit more without affecting, the look of the image much at all, or at all, zero. Neutral density, that's why it's called neutral. And it helps you with that. For me, I'm not in that situation a lot. I chose to go with the HDF version, and it does all the cool creative things that I just went through. All right, next up is 28 versus 40. Should I get 3 or 3X? If you're in the future, 4 or 4x. I decided to go with the 28mm version because I crop to 35 if I feel like shooting 35. Now, 35 and 40, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Is like going from here to here. That's 35 and 40. So if I'm able to move my arm just that much closer, I've turned my 35 crop into a 40. All right, as you saw, I've done it with a shortcut. You can assign shortcut buttons to go through my crops. Now, of course, you're going to think, well, that's a crop of 28 on a 24 megapixel sensor. You're going to get a 16 megapixel image. And I'm like, exactly. Why? Because 16 megapixels is actually quite a lot. It's a legit 35 millimeter crop. So to me, I have both in the 28 millimeter version of the camera. I can kind of go to GR IIIx mode by a press of a button here, and I have my 35 millimeter crop. Well, except my image would be a GR2 image, let's say. GR2 was the previous version of this, and it was a 16 megapixel camera. Why would you get the 40? I guess if you're like a 40 purist, I know those kind of folks exist. They just love that point of view and you don't crop or anything, then yeah, definitely go with that version. But for everybody else, I recommend the 28 millimeter version. Let's talk about image quality a little bit more beyond the HDF on and off situation. You see how vibrant everything is here. It's because I'm in my favorite film simulation, positive film. Beyond that, if you press the function button, you'll see I have control over saturation, which I've decided to increase a little bit, as well as color hue, sort of like a green versus pink, and a high-low key adjustment that brightens up my image or darkens it if I want. Contrast settings, a sharpness setting, as well as a clarity setting. So you can pretty much create the edits you would do, let's say in Lightroom, using the camera itself. And rather than shoot in RAW, you just shoot in JPEG, and you have your crafted image right there in camera. This I don't need to touch. Look, my colors are gorgeous. Everything is exactly as I want. So most of the film simulations can use a combination of film simulation and ISO in the pursuit of getting the image that you want. So we're at ISO, base ISO, right? ISO 100 right now. And the image is gorgeous and sharp and clear, right? And it has a certain level of contrast and everything. But if I simply just raise my ISO to, again, we'll just use 12,800 as the example, you'll see that the image is not only grainier, but slightly contrastier too. And besides that, it's a completely different image because of the texture of the higher ISO and the color shifts and the slight sort of wrongness of it, if you will. It adds an entire other dimension to your photos. So think of your film simulations not just with the color adjustments, but also with your ISO adjustment. You can go to the extremes especially if you're in a black and white film sim. Let's say we go to hard black and white, and we crank up our ISO to 40,000. a couple things happen. Number one, you get extreme grain, right? But besides that, if you zoom in here, wow, this is very extreme, you get interesting artifacts and sort of missing elements of things, which I think is kind of cool. There you go. So that's your effect of ISO on your film sims. Because of course, if I do that same photo with a 200 ISO, I mean, we're in a completely different universe versus what we have here. So feel free to play with that as well as a creative tool. If you're in color modes, one thing to keep in mind is you can mess with your white balance as well as the color shifts that you're able to do in you can add saturation and stuff like I showed you. You can mess with your white balance. So let's say you're in auto white balance versus, I have the edited version here. It's a multi-auto white balance with a shift toward green and aubergine for each. All right, I can do, let me just demonstrate here. You can kind of shift the tone of your whole image by shifting the white balance to a certain direction right in auto mode. And look, it's like I created another film simulation right there on the spot. Settings that you should be aware of are, with regards to your film simulation also, and sort of the look of the images, we're talking image quality, right, are shadow correction and highlight correction in the dynamic range section of your menu. And you can leave them on auto like I have, but you can force them by turning on highlight correction and turning shadow correction on high. This gives you kind of a HDR looking image. You can already see how everything is extra bright. It's a vibe, it's a look. You can pursue it if you'd like, or you can get the opposite effect. So, for example, I don't want my highlights corrected or my shadows touched at all. And in fact, I'm going to underexpose and get a contrasty image as opposed to this bright image, right? All the controls right here at your fingertips. Beyond that, there is the peripheral illumination correction setting. This 28mm lens or the 40mm version, they create a natural vignette around the image, which is kind of like dark edges, as you can see. Just brighten up to normal. And the camera can undo that digitally if you turn this on. Boom. The edges are nice and bright again. Slight problem with this is if you're outside and like you're shooting against the sky in a high contrast black and white, oftentimes later on when you zoom in onto the image, you'll see the gradation of the peripheral illumination correction, and I don't love that. You see sort of like rings of different shades of gray, and it's in this sort of shape of the vignette. So, you can turn that off if you'd rather have a natural vignette around your frame, around your frame. That, is not going to have that gradation because it's the natural vignette of the lens. It's not applied digitally. And I think to any degree of digital you apply it, you're going to have some level of gradation. So accessories that you might want with this are very minimal, actually, because you don't need a ton. It comes with this lanyard that I recommend using like this. You just kind of put around your wrist and once around the ring finger, and it kind of gives you the best grip around the camera. You can get a flash for your GR3, wait for the GR4 flash to come out. That's my top recommendation. And it should be out by the time you watch this video. It's called RICOH GF2, and it rises just about this much above the camera. You're going to want to update the firmware on your GR3, and they haven't released that yet. So this is all future talk, but that's my top recommendation. What I actually use myself is the Pentax AF201FG that was released for the GR3 as far as I know, and I've talked about it in another video. But this is pretty much the only accessory you need is a flash. And if you have an auto flash like this, it works effortlessly. You don't have to touch your adjustments or anything like that. I mean, this being a review of this camera, I don't even have to. I just show you the amazing color and quality in this image. So see for yourself. This is a great camera, for sure. For sure, highly recommended. All right, so if you like to transfer your files manually as opposed to wirelessly, and I go over that wireless transfer in another video, you can use one of these. It's a little dongle, USB-C, works with your phone, tablet, or computer. And lastly, a lens pen. Definitely get a lens pen. This is crucial to keep dust away from your lens, and you just keep your camera clean with it. But that's pretty much it when it comes to accessories. As far as shooting tips goes, I recommend presetting a full press snap. So if you go to your menu and go to the top section of the shooting menu, you'll see full press snap is by default usually on. Consider the setting you're going to be in. Let's say if you're walking down a sidewalk and most of what you're trying to capture is people walking towards you, probably 2 meters away is a good place to set your full press snap distance. And did you catch how I did it? You press and hold your macro button, and then you turn the front dial, and it changes the full press snap. What it's doing right now, it is just setting the distance, the focus distance the camera would go to if I don't autofocus. So I've autofocused now on that guitar. It's focused on whatever that guitar distance is. But let's say if I have my snap focus distance on infinity, if I don't focus on the guitar, I just press all the way, it will default to infinity, which is those trees outside the window, and the guitar is blurry. All right. Why is this useful? Well, if you're outside and you're walking around and you don't have enough time to hold the camera up and focus on your, subject that's walking towards you, all you have to do is preset your focus to whatever that distance you assume is going to be, and you will be in focus. You just press all the way through and your image will be in focus. Especially if you're outside and your f-stop is higher, your aperture is smaller, as you just saw, then it's even better because more of a range will be in focus. You're zone focusing, essentially. And you can shoot very fast by doing so. You put your camera in program mode and you preset your snap focus distance, and look at the speed. On, shot, off. We're done. The camera is closed and like it's finished. How long did that take, right? A good thing you can do besides that is you go to your ISO setting and you raise your minimum shutter speed. It's 30 by default, 1/30th of a second to, let's say, 1/250th of a second, and you won't even have that problem. Look, I'm moving and I know we have shake reduction active as well, but at 2/50th of a second, yeah, no motion blur. if speedy shooting is your vibe, those are two ways you can help yourself. A third way you can help yourself is by shooting in high ISO. You intentionally raise the ISO to, 10,000. And what it does, it forces the camera to not only go up in f-stop, but also go up in shutter speed. It just makes for a more definite shot. The f-stop being high helps you get more things in focus, and the shutter speed being so high pretty much eliminates any motion blur, not just on your end of your hand moving as your hand holding the camera, but also any motion in the environment around you. If the person is walking or a cat is doing a thing or anything like that. And look, you captured your image not just there, but in a vibe, with this high ISO grain and everything else that we already talked about. Lastly, I recommend topping up the battery through the USB-C port here and there. That way you don't have to think about battery at all. It is a small battery on this camera, but the combination of the top up here and there and that sort of a speedy shooting, the camera was on for, I don't know, a couple of seconds there. So that didn't take a ton of battery away from me. With this style, I actually never have to worry about battery on this thing. I don't have an extra spare battery or anything like that. This thing never dies on me because I'm topping it up here and there, and I don't really, take a ton of time with the camera on. You just take your shot and you turn it back off because I've saved my settings. Now, if you're in a sort of studio situation or in a portrait session or some other sort of creative setup where you want to constantly kind of leave the camera on, it's going to look a little obvious, but look at this huge battery, right? So why get spare ones of this tiny guy, right, when I can have this in my pocket, right? It's the size of the entire GR, and plug it in because the GR does work while plugged in. So you simply pop that battery pack in your pocket and you plug in your GR. And for your whole session, you don't have to worry about battery life at all. It doesn't really get in the way. There are cables you can get that kind of fold more easily, or are angled and stuff. If this is, this is just my iPad USB cable, but like this, it's just going off of power. So I have kind of, near infinite power, or at least for several hours I can run the GR. It does get a little warm around here, usually for some reason. I don't know what's right underneath there. But yeah, so that's my battery tip. I do have a whole other video on the settings, so feel free to click through my channel to go watch that. I hope this has been a good enough review or overview of the RICOH GR III, specifically the HDF version in this case. Please ask any questions in the comment section below. I will do my best to respond, and if it requires another video, maybe I'll make another video. Thank you so much for watching. Click the bells and the subscribes and the likes, and send this to your friends. I will see you next time.